Hey everyone, Tony D with a hot take. And it's a hot take about why we need a-holes in the world. I know this is kind of a weird concept, but I was thinking about it and I think it's very true. We are rapidly reaching the point in which people have become so obsessed with looking nice, looking good. And what I mean by that is looking like good people, looking like they've done good things, looking like they think the right things and support the right things, that people have allowed themselves to become hostage to it. There was a line in Wokistan. It was about the politics of eliminating risk. And we've gotten to that point where we've tried to eliminate risk and eliminate anything that might even seem the least bit uncomfortable. And the thing about a-holes, like yours truly, we don't care about that kind of stuff. We just say things, you know. It took me a long time to develop a really good sense of tact. Now, part of that doesn't come from a bad place. It came from a place of honesty. But over the years, you get chastised for your honesty, right? If you go up to a woman and you know, when you're a little kid and say, "Wow, you're big," right? You get chastised for it. Oh, don't say that. That's not nice. And you start to be trained to be nice even to people who maybe need a wake-up call. You know, I've had people in my family who were obese and they suffered later because of it medically. You know, I'm not suggesting that people need to be rude 24/7, but what I am suggesting is people need to develop a thicker skin, and we need to tolerate these kind of thoughts more. Because if some of my relatives had gotten a message earlier on, maybe someone had given them a stronger sense of, hey, listen, you have to lose weight. You look terrible. You're huffing and puffing. You have to lose weight. And they could live much longer than they did, or they could be in better shape today than they are. And I know that's kind of hindsight 2020, but it doesn't just stop there. You know, there's a report out saying that the EU was worried about looking bad and contradicting China, communist China. They were worried about looking racist. A lot of the immigration policy in the EU has been driven by that kind of mindset. Well, we don't want to look racist. We're going to have to take these immigrants in. Part of it is a little bit of the guilt of the fact the Western nations bombed a lot of these countries where the immigrants are coming from over, you know, in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, Syria in particular. And, you know, part of it is nefarious. Part of it is, oh, we would just want cheap labor, and this is a quick avenue to it. Screw the middle class. But a lot of the support from those kinds of policies is driven by this idea that, well, I got to do the right thing. I got to be a good person. I have to support this. I have to. You know, even though it may make me uncomfortable or be contrary to my financial well-being or even just be contrary to common sense, I have to do this. It has gotten to that point in the United States. Now, for a long time, you know, we've always had a-holes. And the joke would be they're called Republicans. But in a lot of sense, the Republicans are like, they act like your dad, right? You know, your dad's the one who a lot of times have to, at least in my family, he had to lower the boom. You know, mom would too, but dad would be the final arbiter of like, there's no way you're doing that. And if he had to yell, you know, so be it. If he had to call you names, you know, up to a point. So be it. And and even your parents in general, they sometimes have to be, or I shouldn't say a-holes, but they have to draw that line of discipline with kids because you're doing something really stupid. Whether it's, you know, you're dating someone who's obviously just using you, or whether you're, you know, getting ripped off, but you don't want to admit it. You know, there's all kinds of scenarios. And I, for one, and I've always believed this, it's better to tell somebody the truth, even though it may hurt their feelings or they don't want to hear it, than not. And that's cost me. I mean, it's cost me in my life, especially with a lot of clients. You know, I tell clients the truth, and I try to prepare them in the outset. I go, look, I'm not here to be your friend. If you just want me to tell you that all your writing's good and that every one of your ideas is great, I'll just tell you that right now. Send me the money and let's wrap this up. Let's not waste a lot of time. And 99% of the time, the client goes, oh, no, you could tell me anything. It's fine, it's fine. And then when I do, they're not prepared for it because they never imagined that I would actually tell them the truth. They never imagined that their writing or their ideas are derivative or bad. Just never entered their brain. And they just thought I was doing the dance, like, well, I'm going to tell you the truth, and then I don't because, you know, I want their money, and then we both delude each other, and I walk away with their money, and they walk away feeling like they've gotten something accomplished, even though really they've got a terrible book or movie or screenplay or whatever. But I refuse to do that. So it's cost me over the years. You know, it's cost me with clients who have just steadfastly, you know, stuck to their guns and said, no, even though I hired you to write, I know better. And this kind of mindset has now sort of overwhelmed the system. I guess it's a result of luxury. You know, we prior to the virus were in this situation in which more people than ever were not starving, were connected to electricity, were connected to the internet. Homicides were down. A lot of that is just due to the advent of smartphones for everybody. Crime was down, violent crimes. I mean, there was, despite what you might read on Twitter, a tremendous trend towards stabilization and you know, eliminating or greatly reducing a lot of the things that hurt people in the world. And yet, we had this situation where people complained more than ever that there were German soldiers from World War II everywhere. Why? I think it's because they needed to feel good more than they needed to actually be safe or whatever. The desire to feel like they're a good person and being able to accomplish that quickly was so, I don't know, driving, so needful that we have created monsters to destroy. And now, looking back on it, now that we have sort of a real crisis, and the real crisis is going to be the economic devastation post-virus, people are kind of unprepared. And if you look at Twitter, man, wow. You want to talk about some unprepared people. Look at Tumblr. Tumblr, my God. Those are bubbles within bubbles within bubbles for people. These are soft, weak people who I wonder how they're going to deal with the economic stress that we're about to roll into. I really do. And the divide has been this left and right, where everybody on the left seems so certain that Trump is so awful. and so casually call him the worst things imaginable, even though those words are now almost meaningless, you know, and they have no concept of the damage they've done by doing that, the damage they've done to those words, the damage they've done to, you know, people and in general to themselves, because we're on the precipice of having to get our acts together again, and these people just aren't ready, and they are going to suffer greatly because of that. The EU is going to suffer greatly. The people who, you know, insist on living in this woke narrative, they are going to suffer greatly in the years ahead, and they're digging in right now, and you can see that in entertainment, in the Star Wars movies. Despite the many warning signs that the whole woke culture thing is an absolute disaster on many different levels, the woke culture warriors are digging in, and they're saying, oh no, we're doing this. We can't turn around now. We have the power. We're digging in. And it's going to be, I shouldn't say it's even going to be a battle to get them out, because they are just going to destroy themselves. The people who have insisted for years that they knew better, no one's listening to them anymore. The media is destroying itself. The EU is destroying itself. The Star Wars woke people are destroying themselves. The money is evaporating, and now people are going to be forced to make a choice. Are they going to choose wokeness over their own well-being? I think some of them will. I think some of them will actually rather die and starve than admit any kind of fault or wrong in the coming weeks and months. I literally think they would rather die than give up their victimhood and give up their shaming. So I think it's important that a-holes be a part of society, because they can stop this in its tracks. They can be the not the antidote, but, you know, they can prepare people for what's ahead. So we need some of that. Not a lot of it, you know, but we need some of it. And obviously we don't want people actually physically abused. I'm against that. I think we're all against that. But verbally, I don't see any problem with it. You know, unless you're trapped in a situation where you're being continually verbally abused and you have nowhere else to go, I think those are, however, extreme cases. But in general, I think we need to tolerate a-holes. I think we need to tolerate a guy like Trump, because whatever you think about him, he's been right on a bunch of issues. Issues that most people didn't want him to be right on. You know, I am a libertarian and I'm big on economics. I really didn't want to believe that Trump's economic plan could work. I didn't want to believe that, but it did. It did, you know, and I had to rethink things after it did. I had to look at that and go, maybe he's not so stupid. Maybe he had a point, and I wasn't seeing it because I had this vision of him as, oh, he just declares bankruptcy and walks away. And maybe I was too set my own ways. For other people, it's this idea, the very idea that they could acknowledge that Donald J. Trump has done some good in the world. I mean, it's just, their heads explode even at the thought. Good! You know, and maybe that's a bit of conditioning from the media, but I think it's also this desire that I can't like Donald Trump. If I like Donald Trump, I'm a bad person. The people who like Donald Trump are bad people. I've made them bad. I've said they are bad. I can't suddenly turn around and like Donald Trump, because then I'll be bad like them. I think that's more, you know. So now, in a weird way, because they've pointed to the Donald Trump supporters and said, well, they're the assholes, we need those assholes now, right? And, you know, when Hillary Clinton called them deplorables, like, they embraced that terminology. So I think we need to all do that now and just acknowledge that, well, you know what? You know, being good and nice in 100% of the situations isn't necessarily the right thing. Sometimes you have to do what's necessary, even if you're going to ruffle some feathers, even if people disagree with you. I am reminded always of this moment where I was directing an improv group, and I yelled at the group because they were completely, I felt they were completely unfocused before the show. And then we went on stage and had an amazing show. But afterwards, I got chastised for yelling at them, and they didn't care that we had a good show. But I cared, and I think the audience cared. I think they cared a lot. And I think if, you know, ultimately there were issues way beyond that that I can't get into that sort of doomed that dynamic. But, you know, for certain things, it just has to be. You have to suck it up and listen to the assholes once in a while. Anyhow, that's my take.